Welcome back. I'm Sage, and this is Easy English with Sage.
Let me start with a question. Not a warm-up question, a real one. Think about the last time you were in a conversation, a meeting, an interview, a phone call, a discussion with a colleague, and someone asked for your opinion. Maybe they asked directly, "What do you think?" Or maybe it was more indirect, "Do you agree with this?" Or perhaps they were presenting an idea and they looked at you, waiting. And in that moment, you knew exactly what you wanted to say. You had a complete, intelligent thought in your head. But when the English came out, it came out flat, simple. Yes, no, maybe, I think so. And you walked away from that conversation knowing that what you said didn't match the quality of what you were thinking. That gap, that specific, frustrating gap between your intelligence and your expression in English. That's exactly what we're here to close today. Because today's session is a deep, immersive, extensive journey into one of the most deceptively simple areas of the English language, and one of the most important. We are going to spend real time, serious time, rebuilding how you express agreement, disagreement, uncertainty, refusal, enthusiasm, hesitation, and every nuanced position in between. We're going to do it at the level of C1 and C2, not because I want to impress you with labels, but because that's the level your thinking deserves. Your ideas are sophisticated. Your English needs to match. The full title of what we're doing today, C1 to C2, Better Ways to Say Yes and No, Listen Once, Sound Natural. And I mean that. Listen once with full attention, practice with full commitment, and you will sound different. Not eventually, not after months. You will hear the difference in your own voice by the end of this session. If your goal is to speak English with the confidence and fluency of an educated professional, to think in English, to respond naturally, to express your true intelligence in this language, this channel is built for you. Subscribe if you haven't already, not as a favor, as a decision that serious learners make when they find something that actually works. Now let's begin. And let's begin with honesty. The words yes and no are not the problem. They're correct. They work. Nobody will misunderstand you if you say them. The problem is what they don't do. They carry the minimum information required to answer a question and nothing more. They don't tell the listener how certain you are. They don't tell the listener whether your agreement is enthusiastic or reluctant. They don't signal that you've thought carefully. They don't add value to the conversation. And in professional settings, in meetings, in interviews, in presentations, in negotiations, the language around yes and no is where your real communication ability is revealed. Think of it this way. Imagine two people are asked the same question in a meeting. Do you think this strategy will work? The first person says, "Yes, I think so." The second person says, "On balance, yes. I think the fundamentals are sound, though I'd want to make sure we've pressure tested the assumptions in the second phase." Both people said yes, but only one of them communicated the quality of their thinking. Only one of them added something to the conversation. Only one of them left the room looking like a strategic thinker. That's what we're building today. Not a vocabulary list, not a phrase book. A way of thinking in English that allows your real intelligence to come through naturally, fluently, and confidently. Let's start at the beginning. Let's start with yes. The simplest upgrade you can make to a plain yes is the word absolutely. Say it with me right now. Absolutely. Feel that word. Absolutely. 4 syllables. Let them land with confidence. Absolutely. Again, absolutely. Now in a sentence. Absolutely. That makes complete sense. One more time. Absolutely. I'll have that ready by end of day. What does absolutely do that yes doesn't? It removes doubt. When you say absolutely, you're signaling certainty without aggression. You're saying, there is no question in my mind. I am fully aligned. This is decided. In a professional setting, that word carries weight. It signals reliability. It signals that when you say you'll do something, you mean it completely, not tentatively. Now, absolutely has a family, and each member of the family carries a slightly different shade of meaning. Let me introduce them one by one. Certainly. This is more formal than absolutely, more service-oriented, more classical. You'll hear it in high-end professional environments, in careful business writing read aloud, in conversations between people who want to signal mutual respect. Certainly, I can arrange that. Certainly, let me look into it and get back to you. Say it, certainly. Notice the tone. It's not cold. It's precise and warm at the same time. It has the quality of someone who takes their words seriously. Of course. Now this one does something genuinely sophisticated. It doesn't just agree. It implies that the thing being agreed to was natural, obvious, expected. Can you keep this between us? Of course. You're really communicating. You didn't need to ask. This was never in question. Of course creates a feeling of shared values and shared understanding. It builds connection quickly. It says, you and I are operating from the same set of principles. Use it when you want agreement to feel effortless and natural. By all means. This is a phrase that gives permission enthusiastically. May I share this with the wider team? By all means, the more people who understand it, the better. It's warm, it's generous, it's adult. It's the kind of English that makes the person on the receiving end feel respected and welcomed. Say it. By all means. Again, by all means, please go ahead. Without a doubt. Emphatic and clear. Without a doubt, this is the right direction. You use this when you want to express complete conviction. No hesitation, no conditions, no reservations. It's slightly stronger than absolutely. It sounds like someone who has thought it through and arrived at certainty. Is this the right team for the project? Without a doubt. Say it, without a doubt. Now let's do something important. Let's practice these 5 phrases in a row. And as you say them, feel how each one carries a slightly different weight and register. Ready? Absolutely. Certainly. Of course. By all means. Without a doubt. Say them again. Slowly. Let each one settle before you move to the next. Absolutely. Certainly. Of course. By all means. Without a doubt. Good. Now let's build on them. Because isolated words are one thing. What you actually need are complete, natural phrases that flow, that you can produce under pressure in real time without translating in your head. So let's add context. Let's make these real. Absolutely, and I think we can go even further on this. Certainly. I'll make sure that's reflected in the final report. Of course, that's always been the priority. By all means, this is exactly the kind of conversation we need to be having. Without a doubt, the data supports that conclusion completely. Say each one of those. Don't rush. Hear yourself speaking. Absolutely, and I think we can go even further on this. Certainly, I'll make sure that's reflected in the final report. Of course, that's always been the priority. By all means, this is exactly the kind of conversation we need to be having. Without a doubt, the data supports that conclusion completely. Can you feel how each one of those sentences does more than just agree? Each one adds a thought. Each one extends the conversation. Each one shows a mind that is engaged, not just responding. That's the difference we're building toward. Let's continue. Because agreement is not only about certainty. Sometimes you want to agree with warmth. Sometimes you want to express not just that you're aligned, but that you're genuinely glad about it, that you're invested, that you care. And this is a different set of tools. I'd be happy to. Three of the most underused words in the vocabulary of ESL learners at this level. I'd be happy to. Say it. I'd be happy to. Again, I'd be happy to take a look at that. Notice what this phrase does. It doesn't just agree, it radiates willingness. It signals that you're not doing something reluctantly, not as an obligation, but with genuine engagement. Could you lead the client call tomorrow? I'd be happy to. It would help to have a quick briefing before, if you're available. You've said yes. You've expressed enthusiasm. And you've immediately moved into practical preparation. That is excellent professional communication. That works perfectly for me. This is the natural, fluid response to a proposed plan, time, or arrangement. It's clean and adult. Can we meet at 10 on Wednesday? That works perfectly for me. Not yes, okay. Not fine. That works perfectly for me. The word perfectly elevates the whole thing. It's not neutral. It's positive without being excessive. That sounds like a solid plan. This is particularly useful after someone has presented an idea or proposed a course of action. I think we should brief the stakeholders before the formal announcement. That sounds like a solid plan. It would give them time to prepare their teams. Notice how the agreement is immediately followed by a reason. Agreement plus reasoning equals advanced communication. Say it. That sounds like a solid plan. I'm fully on board with that. This signals complete alignment, team spirit, commitment. On board is a metaphor. We're all on the same ship, moving in the same direction. I'm fully on board with that approach. Let's move forward. Say it. I'm fully on board with that. Again, I'm fully on board with that. Let's make it happen. I think that's the right call. This is strong, decisive agreement. The right call means the right decision. When you say this, you're not just agreeing passively. You're endorsing the decision. You're saying, this was good judgment. I've decided to bring in an external facilitator for the strategy session. I think that's the right call. It'll bring some useful objectivity. Say it. I think that's the right call. Now, let's put a scenario together. Picture this. You're in a one-on-one meeting with your manager. She's just shared a new approach to how the team will handle client communication. Less email, more structured check-ins. She asks, "What's your read on this?" Here is a C1 level response, fully assembled from what we've built so far. I'm fully on board with this. I think it's the right call, honestly. The volume of email back and forth has been creating a lot of noise, and structured check-ins would give us much better visibility into where things actually stand. That works perfectly for me as an approach. I'd be happy to help draft a framework for the check-in format, if that would be useful. Read that response. Feel it. Every sentence is doing something, expressing alignment, adding reasoning, signaling investment, offering a concrete contribution. This is how fluent professionals sound when they agree. Say the key parts with me. I'm fully on board with this. I think it's the right call. That works perfectly for me as an approach. I'd be happy to help draft a framework if that would be useful. Again, I'm fully on board with this. I think it's the right call. That works perfectly for me as an approach. I'd be happy to help draft a framework if that would be useful. Good. Let's keep building. We're going to go now into what I consider one of the most important and most undertaught areas of advanced English communication, the language of the middle ground. Because real, intelligent communication rarely lives at the poles. It lives in the nuanced space between yes and no, in agreement with conditions, in provisional support, in thoughtful hesitation, in partial alignment. And this is exactly where most learners have the biggest gap. Not because they lack intelligence, because they lack the specific phrases. Let's fill that gap right now. In principle, yes. This is one of the most powerful phrases in professional English, and yet almost no textbook teaches it. In principle, yes means I agree with the general idea, the overall direction, the fundamental concept. But there are details, conditions, or specifics that still need to be worked out before I'm fully committed. Are you comfortable with this proposal? In principle, yes. Though I'd want to review the implementation section more carefully before we finalize anything. Say it. In principle, yes. Again, in principle, yes. I'd want to look at the details more carefully. On balance, I'd say yes. This signals that you've weighed the pros and cons, that you've considered multiple factors, that your agreement is the result of genuine thinking, not a reflexive nod. Do you think the partnership makes sense? On balance, I'd say yes. The risks are real but manageable, and the strategic fit is strong. This phrase is used by senior people, by careful thinkers, by people who are consulted because their opinion carries weight. Say it. On balance, I'd say yes. One more time. On balance, I'd say yes. The strategic fit is strong. I'm inclined to think so. Softer, more tentative, more intellectually humble. This is the language of someone who has a view but holds it with appropriate openness. Do you think they'll accept the terms? I'm inclined to think so. Their initial response was positive, and they haven't raised any major objections. You're not certain. You're leaning, and you're saying so honestly. Say it. For the most part, yes. Partial agreement. You agree with most of it, not all of it. Is the report ready? For the most part, yes. The financial section still needs a final review, but everything else is solid. This is honest and precise. It doesn't oversell your readiness, and it doesn't undersell it. It tells the exact truth. Say it. For the most part, yes. I'd lean toward yes, but this one is very natural in conversation. Would you recommend moving forward? I'd lean toward yes, but I think we need a cleaner exit strategy before we commit. You've given a directional answer. You've been honest about your lean, and you've specified what would make you more certain. Say it. I'd lean toward yes, but. Now complete it. I'd lean toward yes, but I'd want to see the risk assessment first. Now let's also cover the lean toward no, because sometimes you're not sure, but your gut is cautious. And you need language for that. I'm not entirely sure about this. Open, honest, non-committal in the right way. I'm not entirely sure about this. Something about the timing feels off. You're not saying no, you're not saying yes. You're saying, I have reservations that I haven't fully articulated yet, and I want to honor that. This is intellectual integrity. I have some reservations. Slightly more formal, signals that your hesitation is substantive, not just a feeling, but a considered concern. I have some reservations about the timeline. I think we may be underestimating the dependencies. Say it. I have some reservations. Again, I have some reservations about the timeline. I'm not fully convinced yet. This is beautiful. The word yet is doing very important work here. It's saying, I'm open to being persuaded. I haven't closed the door, but you haven't persuaded me yet. Do you think we're ready to scale? I'm not fully convinced yet. I'd like to see another quarter of data before we make that move. I'm not fully convinced yet. One more time. I'm not fully convinced yet, but I'm listening. It's not a straightforward yes. When a question is genuinely complex and deserves a complex answer, it's not a straightforward yes. There are several factors that could change the picture significantly. This phrase does two things. It honestly signals complexity, and it signals that you're about to give a considered, nuanced answer. Both of these are marks of intelligence. It's not a straightforward yes. That's a more complex question than it appears. That's a more complex question than it appears. Let me think through the main factors. That's a more complex question than it appears. Let's pause for a moment. If you're actively repeating these phrases, if you're saying them out loud as we go, you're doing something that most people watching this video will not do. You're building physical memory. Language lives in the body as much as it lives in the mind. The muscles of your mouth, your throat, the rhythm of your breath, these all have to learn a new phrase, not just your brain. So if you haven't been speaking out loud, start now. It makes an enormous difference. Tell me, which phrase so far feels most useful for your real life? Type it in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. Now let's go to the other side, to the no, and let's be clear about something important before we begin. Saying no is not negative. Saying no is not rude. Saying no is not weakness. In advanced English communication, particularly in professional settings, knowing how to say no clearly, professionally, and warmly is one of the most important skills you can have. People who cannot say no clearly are often seen as unreliable because they overcommit and underdeliver. People who can say no gracefully are seen as trustworthy because their yes means something. So let's build your no vocabulary, starting with the direct but professional. I'm afraid that won't be possible. This is formal and clear, not rude, professional. Could you have the full analysis ready by tomorrow morning? I'm afraid that won't be possible given the scope of what's needed. I could have a preliminary overview by morning and the full analysis by end of week. Notice, the no is followed by an alternative. A counter offer. This is how professionals decline without disappointing. Say it. I'm afraid that won't be possible. Again, I'm afraid that won't be possible, but here's what I can do. That's not something I'm in a position to commit to. Slightly more nuanced. It's not that it's impossible. It's that you specifically, in your current situation, cannot make that commitment responsibly. Could you take on the mentoring program as well? That's not something I'm in a position to commit to right now. My plate is genuinely full this quarter. Could we revisit this in Q2? Say it. That's not something I'm in a position to commit to right now. I don't think I'm the right person for this one. Redirecting without refusing. You're not saying the task is impossible. You're saying that someone else would serve better. Could you lead the technical workshop? I don't think I'm the right person for this one. James has much deeper expertise in that area, and I think the attendees would get more value from him. This is honest, humble, and helpful all at once. Say it. I don't think I'm the right person for this one. I'd have to pass on this. Casual, clean, adult. No drama, no excessive explanation, for informal or social declines. Are you coming to the networking dinner Thursday? I'd have to pass on this one. It's been an intensive week and I need the evening to recharge. Simple, honest, complete. Say it. I'd have to pass on this one. That doesn't work for me, I'm afraid. Combining a soft social phrase with a clear no. Afraid here doesn't mean scared. It's a softening device, a way of expressing mild regret. Could we move the meeting to 7 in the morning? That doesn't work for me, I'm afraid. I have a standing commitment before 9. Could we try 10 instead? Say it. That doesn't work for me, I'm afraid. I need to respectfully decline. This is for more formal situations. For invitations, for opportunities, for offers that deserve acknowledgement. We'd love to have you on the advisory board. I need to respectfully decline at this time. My current commitments don't allow me to give it the attention it deserves. I'm genuinely honored by the invitation, though. Say it. I need to respectfully decline. Notice the tone. It's not cold, it's careful and considered. I'm going to have to say no on this occasion. Full, clear, polished, for situations where you want to be unambiguous but courteous. No hedging, no vagueness, just a clear, clean no delivered with grace. I'm going to have to say no on this occasion, but I appreciate you thinking of me. Say it. I'm going to have to say no on this occasion. Now let's talk about the emotional architecture of a graceful no. Because the phrases are only part of it. The structure of a no matters enormously. And here is the structure that works in almost every professional and personal context. First, acknowledge. Show that you've heard and understood what's being asked. Second, express genuine appreciation or regret where appropriate. Third, state the no clearly. Don't bury it. Don't make the person hunt for it. Fourth, if possible, offer an alternative or a reason. This shows you've thought about their need, not just your answer. Fifth, close warmly. Leave the relationship intact. Let me demonstrate this structure in full. Imagine someone asks you to take on an additional project when you're already at capacity. I really appreciate you thinking of me for this. It sounds like a genuinely interesting piece of work. That said, I need to be honest. I'm not in a position to take it on and do it justice right now. My current commitments are at full capacity, and I wouldn't want to underserve either this or my existing work. Is there anyone else on the team who might have the bandwidth? If timing shifts in the next quarter, I'd genuinely love to be considered again. That is a masterclass in graceful professional refusal. Every element is there: appreciation, honesty, clear no, explanation, alternative suggestion, door left open. And the whole thing is warm, not cold, not corporate, not robotic. Say the key structural elements with me. I really appreciate you thinking of me for this. I need to be honest. I'm not in a position to take it on right now. I wouldn't want to underserve either this or my existing work. Is there anyone else on the team who might have the bandwidth? Again, I really appreciate you thinking of me for this. I need to be honest. I'm not in a position to take it on right now. Is there anyone else on the team who might have the bandwidth? Good. Now let's move into territory that many learners find even more challenging than saying yes or no: expressing disagreement. Because disagreement in English done well is not conflict. It's contribution. It adds a perspective. It opens dialogue. It prevents bad decisions. It is genuinely a professional skill. But done badly, disagreement sounds aggressive, dismissive, or disrespectful. And so most learners, especially those who come from cultures where directness in disagreement is not the norm, tend to stay silent. They nod. They let things go. They say yes when they mean no, but here is why. And that silence costs them. It costs them credibility. It costs them the chance to influence decisions. It costs them the professional respect that comes from being known as someone who speaks with substance. So let's build this skill deliberately. I see it a little differently. The softest entry point into disagreement. Not confrontational, not dismissive, just honest. I see it a little differently. I think the market data actually points in the opposite direction. You're not saying the other person is wrong. You're saying you have a different view. That's a contribution, not a conflict. Say it. I see it a little differently. One more time. I see it a little differently. Let me share my perspective. I'm not sure I agree with that actually. Direct but measured. The word actually does something interesting here. It signals mild surprise, as if you were expecting to agree, but found you couldn't. It softens the disagreement slightly without making it vague. I'm not sure I agree with that actually. The precedent from similar projects suggests a different outcome. Say it. I'm not sure I agree with that, actually. I'd push back a little on that. This is one of the most useful phrases in professional English and one of the most underused by non-native speakers. I'd push back a little on that. Signals that you're about to offer a counterpoint. Clearly, professionally, confidently. I'd push back a little on that. I think the bigger risk is actually the operational readiness. Market timing we can manage, but if we're not ready to deliver at scale, that could be more damaging. I'd push back a little on that. That's one perspective, though I'd offer a different angle. I think the internal capability concern is actually the most pressing factor here. With respect, I think that may be oversimplifying the situation. With respect is critical here. It's not sarcastic. It's genuinely courteous. It signals, I respect you. And because I respect you, I'm going to tell you honestly where I think this analysis falls short. With respect, I think that may be oversimplifying the situation. There are at least 3 variables here that could significantly change the outcome. Say it. With respect, I think that may be oversimplifying the situation. I'm not sure the evidence fully supports that conclusion. This is analytical disagreement. You're not questioning the person's judgment personally. You're questioning the logical leap from evidence to conclusion. This is excellent in data-heavy professional environments. I'm not sure the evidence fully supports that conclusion. The sample size is relatively small, and the time frame doesn't account for seasonal variation. Say it. I'm not sure the evidence fully supports that conclusion. I challenge that assumption. For when a foundational assumption is wrong, I challenge that assumption. We're operating as if customer behavior will remain constant. But there are several signals suggesting it's already shifting. Say it. I challenge that assumption. This phrase positions you as someone who thinks rigorously, who questions what others take for granted. That is valuable in any professional context. Now let's look at the phrases that bridge disagreement with empathy, because the most skilled communicators don't just disagree. They show that they genuinely understand the other view before offering their own. This is what separates intellectual confidence from intellectual arrogance. I understand where you're coming from, and at the same time, this is one of the most powerful structures in professional English. I understand where you're coming from, and at the same time, I think we need to consider the longer-term implications. What this structure does, it separates understanding from agreement. You can fully understand someone's position without agreeing with it. And showing that you understand builds trust, even as you disagree. Say the structure. I understand where you're coming from, and at the same time, now complete it. I understand where you're coming from, and at the same time, I think the data tells a different story. I appreciate that perspective, though I'd add a layer of complexity here. You're not dismissing the perspective. You're acknowledging it has value, and then you're adding to it. This is collaborative critical thinking. I appreciate that perspective, though I'd add a layer of complexity here. The short-term savings are real, but the long-term cost of reduced quality could outweigh them significantly. Say it. I appreciate that perspective, though I'd add a layer of complexity here. That's a reasonable position. My concern would be you're granting legitimacy to their view before introducing your concern. This keeps the conversation open and respectful. That's a reasonable position. My concern would be around how we handle the transition period, where the risk of disruption is highest. Say it. That's a reasonable position. My concern would be, I hear you, and here's where I diverge. Direct acknowledgement, followed by clear divergence. I hear you is not agreement. It's acknowledgement of having genuinely listened. I hear you And here's where I diverge. I think the communication strategy needs to happen before the structural changes, not after. Say it. I hear you. And here's where I diverge. Let's do a full disagreement scenario. You're in a meeting. A colleague argues strongly that your team should cut the client reporting frequency from weekly to monthly in order to save time. Here is how you handle it at C1, C2 level. I hear you on the time pressure. Weekly reporting is genuinely resource intensive, and I understand why it feels unsustainable. That said, I'd push back a little on the monthly frequency. Our clients in this segment have told us repeatedly that visibility is one of their primary concerns. It's actually a key part of why they stay with us. I'm not sure reducing that contact to once a month serves the relationship well, even if it saves us internal time. Could we look at streamlining the format of the weekly reports rather than reducing the frequency? That might address the time issue without the relationship risk. Take that response apart. I hear you on the time pressure. Empathy. I'd push back a little. Clear, non-aggressive disagreement signal. Our clients have told us repeatedly, evidence-based. I'm not sure reducing that contact serves the relationship well. Could we look at streamlining the format? Collaborative alternative that solves the underlying problem. This is the full package. Say the core sentences with me. I hear you on the time pressure, and that said, I'd push back a little on the monthly frequency. I'm not sure reducing that contact serves the relationship well. Could we look at streamlining the format rather than reducing the frequency? Again, I hear you on the time pressure, and that said, I'd push back a little. I'm not sure that serves the relationship well. Could we look at an alternative that addresses the time issue differently? Good. Now let's go into the territory of expressing maybe, uncertainty, possibility, conditionality at an advanced level. Because maybe is one of those words that on its own tells very little. Is it a likely maybe? A hopeful maybe? A skeptical maybe? A polite deflection? In English, there are beautiful ways to distinguish between all of these. It's quite possible. This is a moderate probability, not certain, but genuinely likely. It's quite possible we'll close the deal before the end of the quarter. Say it. It's quite possible. Notice how quite elevates this above plain possible. It's tilting toward yes. There's a reasonable chance. Similar probability, slightly more analytical in tone. There's a reasonable chance the market will stabilize by mid-year, though it depends on a few external factors. Say it. There's a reasonable chance. I wouldn't rule it out. This is particularly interesting. It's a double negative. You're not saying it will happen. You're saying you're not eliminating the possibility. It's slightly more understated than it's possible. It suggests you've considered and decided not to dismiss. Do you think they'd consider a joint venture? I wouldn't rule it out. They've shown interest in partnership models before. Say it. I wouldn't rule it out. One more time. I wouldn't rule it out. It's worth exploring. That remains to be seen. Beautiful, wise, patient. It acknowledges genuine uncertainty while carrying a tone of calm equanimity. People who say, that remains to be seen, sound like they've been through enough cycles to know that outcomes take time to reveal themselves. Will the new strategy deliver results? That remains to be seen. The early indicators are promising, but it's too early to draw firm conclusions. Say it. That remains to be seen. Again, that remains to be seen, but the early signals are encouraging. It's too early to say. Honest and direct. You genuinely don't have enough information yet. Is the integration going well? It's too early to say with confidence. We're only 2 weeks in. Ask me in a month. Say it. It's too early to say. It depends on a number of factors. This is for genuinely complex situations where a simple yes or no would be dishonest. Could this model work in other industries? It depends on a number of factors. primarily the regulatory environment and the maturity of the data infrastructure. The key, always, is to follow "it depends" with what it depends on. Otherwise, you sound evasive. With the condition, you sound analytical. Say it as a complete thought. It depends on a number of factors, primarily the regulatory environment. I'd need more information before I could say definitively. Honest and professional. You're not being evasive. You're being precise. You recognize that a definitive answer requires information you don't have yet. I'd need more information before I could say definitively, but my initial read is cautiously positive. Say it. I'd need more information before I could say definitively. Now let's look at a particularly sophisticated area: conditional agreement. The language of yes if and yes provided that. This is genuinely advanced English, the kind that marks someone as a careful, substantive thinker. I'd support that, provided that. Say it. I'd support that, provided that. Now complete it. Provided that we have a clear escalation protocol in place. This phrase signals, I'm with you in principle, but my support is conditional. There is something that needs to be in place before I'm fully committed. It's not a reluctant yes. It's a responsible yes. It says I've thought about what needs to be true for this to work. I'd be comfortable proceeding as long as. Similar structure. I'd be comfortable proceeding as long as we've addressed the compliance requirements. Say it. I'd be comfortable proceeding as long as. Now complete it in your own context. Think of a real situation and finish the sentence. I could get behind that, on the condition that. Slightly more formal. Very clear. I could get behind that expansion plan, on the condition that we've secured the necessary operational capacity first. I could get behind that, on the condition that that would work for me, assuming the timeline is flexible enough to accommodate the stakeholder review. That would work for me, assuming. Yes, with some caveats. Incredibly useful. It's honest shorthand for, I agree in principle, but there are important conditions. Are you comfortable with the proposal? Yes, with some caveats. The financial projections need revisiting, and I'd want legal to review the liability clauses. Yes, with some caveats. This phrase does something very useful. It signals transparency. You're not hiding your reservations. You're naming them up front. That's trustworthy. That's professional. Let's do a scenario for conditional agreement. You're being asked to approve a plan to expand into a new market next quarter. You think the idea is good, but the timing is aggressive. Yes, with some caveats. The market opportunity is real, and I think the strategic rationale is sound. I'd support moving forward, provided that we've fully assessed the operational readiness, specifically our capacity to localize the product and support local customer needs. I could get behind a Q3 launch as long as we use Q1 and Q2 for thorough groundwork rather than rushing. The risk of entering underprepared is higher than the risk of entering 1 quarter later. Say the key lines. Yes, with some caveats. I'd support moving forward, provided that we've assessed operational readiness. I could get behind a Q3 launch as long as we use Q1 and Q2 for thorough groundwork. Again, yes, with some caveats. I'd support moving forward, provided that we've assessed operational readiness. I could get behind this, as long as we don't rush the preparation. Now let's spend time on something that connects all of this: the language of acknowledgement and validation. Because in any conversation, especially a disagreement or negotiation, the ability to acknowledge what the other person has said before responding is enormously powerful. It signals that you've listened. It signals that you take the other person seriously. And it significantly lowers the defensiveness that often makes conversations difficult. That's a fair point. 4 words that can change the temperature of a conversation. You're not agreeing. You're saying, your argument has merit. I acknowledge it. The implementation timeline is more complex than we've been assuming. That's a fair point. I think we need to build more buffer into the plan. Say it. That's a fair point. Now add a response. That's a fair point. Let me factor that into my analysis. I take your point about the cost sensitivity at this stage. It's a real constraint. You've heard the argument. You've accepted its validity. You're incorporating it. Say it. I take your point. You raise a valid concern. You're not just acknowledging, you're validating. Their concern is not just something they said. It's a legitimate concern that deserves to be addressed. You raise a valid concern about the timeline. Let me think through how we can address it. Say it. You raise a valid concern. That's worth considering. Slightly more neutral than fair point. It doesn't fully endorse the argument, but it gives it real standing. The customer feedback on this has been mixed. That's worth considering. Let's make sure the product team sees this before we finalize. Say it. That's worth considering. I hadn't considered that angle. This is intellectual honesty and courage. You're openly acknowledging that the other person has brought something to your attention that you hadn't thought about. Far from making you look weak, this actually builds respect. It shows that you're genuinely in conversation, not just waiting to defend your position. I hadn't considered that angle. It actually changes how I'd frame the recommendation. Say it. I hadn't considered that angle. One more time. I hadn't considered that angle. Thank you for raising it. Fair enough. 2 words. Quiet elegance. The verbal equivalent of a thoughtful nod. It concedes a point without drama. It closes a loop without lingering. We may have underestimated the competitive response. Fair enough. Let's build that into the scenario planning. Say it. Fair enough. Again, fair enough, let's adjust accordingly. Point taken. Similar to fair enough, but slightly more formal. Often used in situations where you were initially resistant to something and have now accepted the argument. Point taken. I'll revise my position on the timeline. Say it. Point taken. I stand corrected. For when you've stated something incorrectly and someone has provided accurate information. This phrase requires intellectual courage, the willingness to openly acknowledge an error without defensiveness, and it builds trust enormously. People who say I stand corrected are people whose confidence doesn't depend on being right all the time. I stand corrected. The actual figure is 42%, not 35%. Thank you. Say it. I stand corrected. One more time. I stand corrected. I appreciate the clarification. Now let's talk about the language of enthusiastic agreement, the vocabulary of saying yes with genuine energy. Because there's a difference between passive agreement and engaged, invested agreement. And in English, this difference is communicated through specific phrases that signal not just that you agree, but that you're excited by the agreement, that you feel aligned, that you're energized by the shared view. I couldn't agree more. Say it. I couldn't agree more. This is emphatic agreement delivered with complete calm. No exclamation needed, no theatrics, just a clear, confident signal that you are fully, completely aligned. The communication strategy needs a complete overhaul. I couldn't agree more. We've been operating with a broken model for at least 18 months. Say it. I couldn't agree more. Again, I couldn't agree more, and I think the timing is right to make that case to leadership. Exactly. That's precisely what I've been thinking. This phrase signals that you've arrived at the same view independently, which is very powerful. It's not just agreement. It's convergence of two independent thinkers. The root issue is the incentive structure, not the people. Exactly. That's precisely what I've been thinking. Fix the incentives and the behavior changes. Exactly. That's precisely what I've been thinking. You've articulated it perfectly. This is a compliment and an agreement combined. You're saying the idea is right and the way you expressed it is also right. You've articulated it perfectly. That's a much cleaner way to frame the argument than I had. You've articulated it perfectly. That's exactly the point I was trying to make. So essentially, the problem is that we're measuring activity rather than outcomes. That's exactly the point I was trying to make. We've been rewarding effort regardless of results. That's exactly the point I was trying to make. You've hit the nail on the head. An idiom, but a widely used and completely natural one. It means you've identified exactly the right thing, perfectly, with precision. The issue isn't the technology, it's the change management. You've hit the nail on the head. We've invested heavily in the tools and almost nothing in the adoption strategy. Say it. You've hit the nail on the head. That resonates with me. This is slightly different. It's agreement at the level of feeling or intuition, not just logic. Something resonates when it rings true, when it connects with your own experience or instinct. That resonates with me. I've seen exactly that dynamic play out on previous projects. Say it. That resonates with me. One more time. That resonates with me. It captures something I've observed but never quite named. Now, let's do something that I think is really valuable at this stage in our session. We've built a large, rich vocabulary of agreement, disagreement, uncertainty, and acknowledgement. And now, I want to practice fluency, the ability to move between these naturally, without hesitation, as real conversation requires. Because in real conversation, you don't have time to think, which phrase should I use here? You need these to be available, automatic, natural. So let's do a rapid series of conversational prompts. For each one, I'll give you a statement or question. I want you to respond out loud, using one of the phrases we've built today. Don't overthink. Trust your instinct. If you use a phrase imperfectly, good. Imperfect practice is better than perfect silence. Prompt 1. Your colleague says, I think we should delay the launch by 1 month to improve the product. Your response might be, that resonates with me. I'd rather launch strong than launch on time and have to manage a difficult reception. Prompt 2. Your manager says, I'd like you to represent the team at the executive briefing next week. Your response might be, absolutely, I'd be happy to. Could you brief me on the key messages you'd like me to emphasize? Prompt 3. A client says, we're concerned about the quality control on the last delivery. Your response might be, you raise a valid concern. I want to understand exactly what you experienced. Can you walk me through the specific issues? I take this seriously, and I want to address it properly. Prompt 4. A colleague proposes cutting corners on the testing phase to save time. Your response might be, I'd push back a little on that. In my experience, the time you save on testing, you pay back twice in post-launch fixes. Could we look at where else we might create some time savings? Prompt 5. Someone asks if your project will finish on schedule. That remains to be seen. We're on track right now, but there are a couple of dependencies that could shift the timeline. I'll have a clearer picture by end of next week. Notice how in each of these responses, you're not just communicating yes or no. You're communicating the quality of your thinking, your relationship with the topic, your awareness of complexity. That's what C1 and C2 communication looks like. Not bigger words, not more grammar. Richer, more precise, more relational communication. Let's keep going. I want to give you now a set of phrases for something specific. The professional no that leaves the relationship completely intact. Because sometimes you have to say no to someone you genuinely like and respect, to a mentor, to a client, to a friend who is also a colleague. And in those situations, The language has to do double work. It has to decline clearly while preserving warmth. I really wish I could say yes to this. The truth in this sentence is important. You're not just being polite, you mean it. The opportunity or request has genuine appeal, but you can't. I really wish I could say yes to this. It's genuinely a compelling opportunity. The timing just doesn't align with where I am right now. Say it. I really wish I could say yes to this. This one's hard for me to decline. Before saying no, you name the difficulty. You let the person know that saying no cost you something too. This one's hard for me to decline. I think the project is important and I believe in the team. But I need to be honest that I don't have the capacity to do it well. Say it. This one's hard for me to decline. I genuinely appreciate you thinking of me for this. Lead with real appreciation, not as a formula, as a genuine acknowledgement. I genuinely appreciate you thinking of me for this. It means a lot. I need to pass on this occasion, but please keep me in mind for future opportunities. I genuinely appreciate you thinking of me for this. I'm not in a position to give this the attention it deserves. This is one of the most respectful ways to decline, because it centers the task rather than your own limitations. You're not saying no because you don't want to. You're saying no because you respect the task enough to know it deserves better than what you can currently give it. I'm not in a position to give this the attention it deserves right now, and this is the kind of work that deserves full focus. Could we talk about timing again in the next quarter? I'm not in a position to give this the attention it deserves. I want to be honest with you. This phrase before a no signals that what follows is genuine, not a convenient excuse, not a polite brush off. I want to be honest with you. I've been stretched quite thin this month, and taking on something else would mean doing everything less well. I'd rather say that to you now than let you down later. I want to take a moment because we're deep into this session and I want to acknowledge something. The learners who make it this far in a long-form practice session are not the casual learners. They're the serious ones. The ones who decided, at some point, maybe years ago, that they were going to do this properly, that they were going to invest real time and real attention into this language, that they weren't going to settle for good enough when they knew excellent was possible. If that's you, and if you're still here, it almost certainly is. I want you to know that this kind of practice matters, more than you can feel in the moment. The phrases you've repeated today are being encoded in your brain in ways that will surface later. In a conversation when you're tired, in a meeting when you're nervous, in a moment when you need the English and there's no time to think. The work you do now shows up then. Type something in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. Anything, even just the number of phrases you've practiced today. The act of engaging keeps your brain active, and an active brain learns faster. Let's continue building. I want to give you now what I think of as the sophisticated pivot language. These are the phrases that allow you to transition from one position to another, from agreement to concern, from enthusiasm to caution, from one topic to a related one, in a way that sounds natural and intelligent. That said, 2 words that do enormous work. You can use that said after any statement to signal that you're about to add complexity, nuance, or a counterpoint. The proposal is strong in many areas. That said doesn't cancel what came before. It adds to it. It says both things are true. Say it. That said. Now in context. The team has done excellent work. That said, I think we can push further in the final phase. Having said that, similar to that said, but slightly more formal. The results are promising. Having said that, I think it's important we don't read too much into a single quarter. Say it. Having said that, Again, the situation has improved significantly. Having said that, we're not out of the woods yet. At the same time, this is a pivot that signals simultaneous truth. Both things exist together. They're not in opposition, they're coexisting. The project is on track. At the same time, there are early warning signs that we should be watching carefully. Say it at the same time. In context, I support this direction. At the same time, I want to make sure we've thought through the second-order effects. Nevertheless, slightly formal but widely used, it signals that despite what was just said, a different truth also holds. The initial results were disappointing. Nevertheless, I think the underlying approach is sound and worth refining. Say it. Nevertheless. Again, the feedback was mixed. Nevertheless, there's enough positive signal here to continue. Even so, casual, natural, conversational equivalent of nevertheless. The costs are higher than we'd hoped. Even so, the return on investment over a 5-year horizon is compelling. Say it. Even so. In context. It's a complex situation. Even so, I think the path forward is relatively clear. Granted, this is a sophisticated way to concede a point before making a counterargument. Granted, the initial investment is significant, but the operational savings over 3 years more than justify it. Granted says, I acknowledge the truth of what you've raised, and it immediately positions you to add your own perspective. Granted, the timeline is tight, but I think we have the capacity if we prioritize correctly. Let's now go into something I consider genuinely advanced territory, the language of intellectual confidence, the phrases that signal you know what you're talking about. You've thought about it carefully, and you're bringing considered perspective, not just opinion. In my assessment, this signals that what follows is not just a feeling or a preference, it's the result of analysis. In my assessment, the main risk factor is not the technology, but the organizational readiness. In my assessment, the second option offers significantly better long-term value. Based on what I've seen, grounds your view in evidence and experience. Based on what I've seen in similar projects, the transition period is where the most significant risks tend to concentrate. Based on what I've seen, this approach tends to work well in the early stages, but requires adaptation as scale increases. From where I stand, the communication gap between the two teams is the most urgent thing to address. From where I stand, the fundamentals are solid. What we need now is better execution. My read on this is that they're still interested, but they need more time internally to build consensus. My read on this is that the hesitation is about risk tolerance, not about the quality of the proposal. The way I see it, classic, confident, natural. The way I see it, we have two real options here, and both have significant trade-offs. Let me walk through them. Say it, the way I see it. One more time, the way I see it, the short-term cost is outweighed by the long-term strategic value. These phrases, in my assessment, based on what I've seen, my read on this, the way I see it, they do something important. They signal that you're about to offer a substantive view, not just a reaction. They set up what follows as considered, not impulsive. They make the listener lean in slightly. And in professional settings, that quality of attention, the sense that this person is about to say something worth hearing, is enormously valuable. Now let's build one final extended scenario, a full conversation that uses everything we've practiced today. This is our capstone, our graduation exercise. Read it, then go back and try to produce it from memory, not word for word, conceptually, structurally, with the phrases in the right places. The scenario? You're in a senior team meeting. Your company is considering a major restructuring, combining two departments into one. Your manager presents the rationale and asks for your honest input. Manager: we think combining the two teams will create efficiencies and improve collaboration. What's your honest read on this? Your response: in my assessment, the rationale is sound. The overlap between the two teams has been creating inefficiencies, and the collaboration case is well-founded. That said, I want to be honest. I have some reservations about the execution, not the direction. The way I see it, the main risk is in the transition. Based on what I've seen in similar restructurings, the first 3 to 6 months are where most of the value either gets built or gets lost. And that depends almost entirely on how clearly the new reporting structure and working norms are communicated. I'm inclined to support this, with some caveats. I'd feel more confident if we had a detailed change management plan before we announce anything. And I'd push back a little on the idea of moving quickly. Moving thoughtfully here will actually save us time in the long run. On balance, I think this is the right call. I just want to make sure we're setting it up for success rather than just speed. Now take that apart. In my assessment, analytical authority. That said, I want to be honest. Pivot into honest concern. The way I see it, personal perspective clearly framed. Based on what I've seen, evidence from experience. I'm inclined to support this with some caveats. Conditional agreement. Honest. I'd push back a little on specific, non-aggressive disagreement. On balance, I think this is the right call. Final position, decisive. Every element we've practiced today is in that response. In my assessment, the rationale is sound, though I have some reservations about the execution. The way I see it, the main risk is in the transition. I'm inclined to support this, with some caveats. I'd push back a little on moving quickly. On balance, I think this is the right call. Again, in my assessment, the rationale is sound, though I have some reservations. I'm inclined to support this with some caveats. I'd push back a little on the timeline. On balance, I think this is the right call. On balance, I think this is the right call. I just want to make sure we're setting it up for success. That was real. That was professional. That is English that earns respect. Let's do a final rapid-fire pass through the most essential phrases from everything we've covered today. This is your review. This is the layer of consolidation. Say each phrase after me, out loud, clearly, confidently. Not as memorization, as ownership. Absolutely. Certainly. Of course. By all means. Without a doubt. I'll be happy to. That works perfectly for me. I'm fully on board with that. I think that's the right call. In principle, yes. On balance, I'd say yes. I'm inclined to agree. For the most part, yes. I have some reservations. I'm not fully convinced yet. It's not a straightforward yes. I'm afraid that won't be possible. That's not something I'm in a position to commit to. I need to respectfully decline. I really wish I could say yes to this. I'm not in a position to give this the attention it deserves. I see it a little differently. I'm not sure I agree with that, actually. I'd push back a little on that. With respect, I think that may be oversimplifying the situation. I'd challenge that assumption. I understand where you're coming from, and at the same time, that's a fair point. I take your point. Fair enough. Point taken. I stand corrected. I couldn't agree more. You've hit the nail on the head. That resonates with me. I hadn't considered that angle. In my assessment, based on what I've seen, the way I see it, my read on this is, that said, having said that, nevertheless, even so, granted, breathe. You have just worked through one of the most comprehensive vocabulary rebuilds for yes, no, agreement, disagreement, uncertainty, and refusal available anywhere. And you didn't just hear these phrases, you said them, you spoke them. They've been in your mouth today. Now, a final word. Language learning is long. It is patient work. It does not reward people who sprint and then stop. It rewards people who show up consistently, who practice regularly, who bring real phrases into real conversations, even when it feels slightly awkward, even when it's not perfect, even when they have to think for a half second before the phrase comes. Every time you use one of today's phrases in a real conversation, even once, you move it from something I practiced to something I own. That's the process. That's how fluency is built. Not in classrooms, not in vocabulary lists. In the moments when the language meets real life and you choose to use it. You are a serious learner. I know this because you're still here. You made it to the end of a long, demanding session. That's not nothing. That's a choice, a commitment, and it shows in the quality of how you'll speak going forward. My name is Sage. This is Easy English with Sage. Come back tomorrow. Come back next week. Keep building, one session, one phrase, one conversation at a time.